All right, everyone, let's make a start. So, welcome to the launch of the Volume 9, Issue 1 of the University of Leeds Human Rights Journal. So, this year it's been a unique yet incredibly successful year for the journal. So, having been part of the journal throughout my university experience, this has been a key aspect of my time at Leeds. Looking at the continuous success and expansion of this journal during the past few years, I'm confident of the journal's potential over the coming years, despite new obstacles encountered by the editorial team, consisting of our managing editors who are here, our online editor, Zara, marketing officer, Rachel, our peer reviewers, our steering committee, two of the members are here as well, and our graphic designer, who has done a really good job this year. All have done a really good job in making this project to come to fruition. So this year we worked remotely with the editorial team, completely remote. We have not seen each other in person. It's been extremely challenging yet productive. The commitment of the team and the drive to reach our goals has contributed to the quality of the journal this year. At our first editorial meeting, which I remember, we agreed that we shared the vision of increasing the reach, funding, and quality of the journal. So our outreach team, so within the board itself, we have Rachel, Zara, and Neve. They have done a remarkable job of increasing engagement with the journal through expanding our presence on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and through sending marketing emails to reach as many students as possible. Our managing editor responsible for the journal's finance, Hannah, has been really successful securing funding. So we have got funding from the Center of Ethnicity and Racism Studies, the Faculty of Social Sciences, and the Laidlaw Foundation, which has greatly contributed to the activities of the journal. Our managing editor responsible for corresponding with the wider team, we have Poppy, has been fantastic in communicating with our peer reviewers and our newly formed steering committee, ensuring that they have the full opportunity to contribute to the journal's to the year's publication, to this year's publication, as well as improving the broader activities of the journal. Our peer review process this year was enhanced through a more competitive recruitment process and a bigger team, as well as additional training resources made available to the peer reviewers, which I believe has led to a higher standard of work in the 2021 journal. So the editorial team truly appreciates the work done by our peer reviewers for those who have attended, for their meticulous attention to detail, and for their efforts in promoting the journal. We also have one of our previous peer reviewers, Eve Jones, who joined us for a second term, and she brought in her experience to provide us with her leadership and valuable feedback. So, something exciting this year is our new feature, which is the steering committee. So, the editorial team believes that this steering committee will provide input in improving the quality of the journal and equally assist us in the continuity of the journal's management, as most of us are graduating this year. And our administrative members, so in the steering committee, we have Tess Hornsby Smith and Ed Clark, who have assisted us with handling our communications within the Faculty of Arts, Humanities and Cultures, while our academic members, so we have Dr. Ipek Demir, Dr. Adrian Gallagher, and Dr. Ilias Trispiotis, they gave the approval for all the articles that have been published, and they have also picked the winning article for the HRJ Essay Prize. So I would like to say that the scholarship displayed in the publication this year has been of the highest quality, starting with the winning piece, so which is agreed to be the best piece, and then followed by the winning piece, the next piece which we have from Aisha Habib Ahmed, which is titled Indefinite Leave to Remain, which was a personal favorite in the whole journal, and it captures the theme of transition really well. So for indeed, if you read this piece, no matter how much has changed, I have always felt that I have been denied my cup of tea. This year, the journal was successful in hosting 6 events, achieving 200 attendees to some of the events, with follow-up blog posts by members of the editorial team. The first event on decolonizing human rights was a personal goal of mine, and I'm thankful to the faculty at SIRS for collaborating with us to make this event a huge success. The event was followed by our Uyghur human rights crisis and the Kashmir issue webinars, which highlighted the plight of Muslims living under the governments of the two most populous countries. On Human Rights Day, we collaborated with the ECR2P, with Emily from the ECR2P SOC, hosting the event to discuss the viability of the R2P beyond the West. Our following collaboration was with Sunny from Skills at Library, who delivered a session to train the editorial teams, peer reviewers, and journal contributors on critical writing and research skills. Lastly, on International Women's Day, we had a fantastic event called Women in Focus, with an interdisciplinary panel of speakers from POLIS and geography. Each of these events have brought insight to the reality of human rights and provided a ground for discussion in which the audiences actively contributed. Furthermore, a main feature of the journal is our blog. So it has been adeptly managed by our online editor, Zara, and has been complemented by the social media promotion by our digital marketing officer, Rachel. Some of my personal favorites were by Lawrence on immigration policy and Access on Islamophobia, both of which problematizes the liberal perspective of human rights by highlighting its exclusion of immigrant and minorities living in the West. I hope the journal's blog continues to be a place that provides a voice to marginalized communities and a safe space to discuss and promote human rights. So to everyone attending, I encourage you to kind of submit your articles to the journal's blogs. So a more personal kind of part for me, I joined this article 3 years ago with many aims and aspirations. Firstly, for my career. Secondly, to improve my academic skills, which I have. And the most important one is to support the voice of marginalized communities who have been denied their basic human rights. In my first year, I contributed an article to the blog on the arrest of 2 Reuters journalists in Myanmar for working on the investigation of the Indian massacre, where Rohingya Muslims in the Rakhine state were brutally killed. And as a peer reviewer, I reviewed a few articles, one of which was a piece on refugee rights and cosmopolitanism, which was written in reference to Mohsin Hamid's Exit West. And I would highly recommend you to read both the book and the article in our 7th volume. In my second year, I was the online editor for the HRJ. So during my time as an editor, I did my best to publish blog articles from as many varying perspectives. And I was lucky at that time to have study abroad columnist, which is a kind of a luxury now, I would say, for Zara. Yeah, and I wrote pieces highlighting the oppression of Muslims in Kashmir, Xinjiang, Tibet, and the oppression of the Palestinian people. So I'd just like to say that we have the choice to stay silent on these issues now and leave it up to the future generations to learn about it in their history books, as we have learned about the Bengal famine and the Rwandan genocide. Or we also have the choice of acting, however possible, to stop and prevent such human rights violations from happening. So this year, we organized 5 webinars of such to highlight human rights issues, and our guest speakers were able to share their experience and give us advice on how we can join the fight for a world, ideally, where justice prevails and human rights is, and every human is given the right to live a decent, respectable life. So I hope as we, the editorial board, now that we're graduating, as we progress in our careers, we carry this fight with us. And I'm pleased at how far this journal has come over the last 3 years I'm here. And I'm confident of its continued success with our steering committee and the renewed editorial team for the next year. So with that, I'll end my keynote speech and I'll hand it on to my editorial board.
Thank you so much, Azar. I'm Poppy. I'm one of the managing editors. As Azar previously mentioned, I worked with the steering committee and the peer reviewers as part of my role. So a huge thank you to our steering committee members and all of our peer reviewers for getting involved and helping out. The steering committee has been completely invaluable in helping us to review our pieces and really push the journal to be a lot more credible, and hopefully for years to come, that continuity, as we said. The peer reviewers have obviously done an amazing job at reviewing and editing the works. I think that the submissions have been a really high standard and they've really helped us to organize that as well. And just on a personal note, I would say that I'm a second year. This is my first year kind of involved in the journal. I'm not as experienced as everyone else, but I would just say that it's really never too late to get involved in the journal and human rights at all. I think that even just reading the journal is such a good place to start, and I would really encourage everyone to get involved from here on out.
Hi, I'm Neve, and I'm also one of the managing editors. This year I've been responsible for the outreach of the journal, so making sure that the journal is reaching as many people as we can. So a big thank you to everyone who has shared our events, who has turned up, to everyone who we've been able to collaborate with. It's great to be able to spread the word about the journal and make sure that everyone is aware of what we're doing and how they can get involved. Like Poppy, I would say being part of this team is a really great opportunity, a really great experience. It brings like-minded people together to think about human rights from a multidisciplinary perspective. And I think, especially if you read this year's journal, you'll see that the issue of human rights doesn't just belong to one discipline, but it's of importance across a range of subjects. There's so many interesting topics and issues covered in the journal, and it's just great to see people engaging from such a range of academic disciplines. And hopefully, as the journal continues to go forward, it will become increasingly diverse and multidisciplinary.
Hi everyone, it's really nice to meet you. I'm Zara, the online editor. As Azhar mentioned, I was previously the year abroad editor, and then this year managed to secure a position on the editorial board. In my role, I manage the website and the website traffic. So my main job is to coordinate the online blog, liaise with writers, and help them formulate articles based on topics that they're passionate about. I then edit the articles and upload them to the website, and then aid Neve and Rachel in the promotion of the journal. I'd like to just thank everyone that's contributed to the blog this year. It's been really, really hard, understandably, because of lockdowns and online university. However, we've had some absolutely excellent writers, really engaging content, and we've kind of created an online community between the writers with the journal. So from Poppy's article on International Women's Day to Lawrence's article on if the UK should adopt an Australian-style immigration policy, through the blog we've managed to discuss a plethora of topics that undergraduates are concerned with, and also to offer diverse perspectives on events that have occurred over the past year. Our most popular post on the blog this year was my article on the Reclaim the Night Headingley movement, shortly followed by Aksar Arshad's poignant and very topical article on Islamophobia in France. As Azhar also mentioned, one thing that we're really keen to do this year is to make the blog and the Human Rights Journal more accessible. So if you go onto the website and onto the blog, you can actually see little summaries of every event that we did written up by people, and then a link to the recordings. So if people miss the event or just want to be reminded of some of the things that were spoken about, it's all on the blog. In terms of the website, thanks to the efforts of Rachel as well, website traffic has increased massively since last year, and our engagement online has just absolutely gone through the roof. Going forward, I'm really excited to see what happens with the blog and in the website, and I really hope that we can continue growing this wonderful community and keep like-minded people together. Thank you very much.
Hi there. Yeah, I'm the last member of the editorial board, so I'm the digital marketing officer. And my role is managing the social media accounts, working with Zara and Neve to kind of share the wider activities of the journal, as well as sharing the activities of the journal and the blog. This role is really important in gaining submissions, but also sharing the wider activities of the journal. And so it's really helped in obviously increasing the traffic towards the website, but it's also been really important in raising wider awareness of human rights issues. And so I think the social media has really taken a step forward this year in making a difference in more wider issues, as opposed to the narrow academic focus that maybe the journal has. And it's kind of added a new level to the journal alongside all of the rest of the activities. And hopefully this will expand in the future as we can integrate both the online activities that we have experienced this year with the in-person ones that they have obviously experienced in the past pre-COVID. And I look forward to seeing what could happen under the next editorial board with the contributions of the new steering committee, which I'm sure will definitely improve the quality and legitimacy of the journal. And we are looking for submissions for the editorial board starting from this week. So please do keep an eye out on social media if you are interested in joining next year.
All right, we have done very well for time. So it is now time to kind of launch our journal. And since it's online, we are hosting it on an online platform. And to those who have contributed to our journals, we have sent you a separate email on how you could get the printed copies. So if everyone would keep an eye on their chat, I'll be sending the link of the journal to the chats right now, where you could click on, and then we still have more to say. So you can just browse through the journal now, and then later have a more deeper read. So here we go, launching the 9th volume of the Human Rights Journal, and the link, and I'm sending it. So here we go. Hopefully the link works perfectly. If someone could just shout me. Yeah, editorial board members, so the link is working, right? Okay, that's good. So yeah, with that, if you were to look at our journal, we have our first piece, which is by Adrian, Dr. Adrian Gallagher, who submitted his kind of artwork. So he's part of the steering committee. He'll be giving a speech later. And then the second piece is our winner of the essay prize. So we have Georgia McKay, who is here right now. Her piece, as was commented by the steering committee, that it was one of the best analytical pieces, and the research was also really good. And as we read through, kind of when we were doing the editorial process, so we didn't know who was going to win at that time, this piece stood out to us as one of the better pieces. It was 1.11. It was 1.11 on our document. So when we were reading it, we felt that it was strong, and it didn't need a lot of work on as well. So Georgia, if you would like to say something, I'll give you the time right now.
Hi everyone, I'm Georgia. I'd like to thank the steering committee for awarding me the essay prize for my essay on the extent to which transitional justice settlements in Sierra Leone following the Civil War combated cultures of impunity around gender-based violence against women and girls. I was very surprised and proud when I found out, and also because I'm interested in pursuing a career in academia, winning this award has reinforced that desire. And I'd also like to thank the Leeds Human Rights Journal for giving me the opportunity to have my work published in their journal. I'm a history undergraduate, but I wrote this essay for a politics discovery module called Violence and Reconciliation in Africa, which I did in semester 1. As a history student, it was very refreshing to research something so current and with such contemporary significance. I chose to focus on gender-based violence against women and girls because I'm passionate about gender equality and believe in a fair and equal society where women are protected from violence and can prosper to the same extent as men. And I chose to submit this essay to the Human Rights Journal because I think it's important when thinking about transition, what is required to make long-lasting and sustainable change. I just want to say thank you again.
All right, thank you so much, Georgia. I'm sure if when everyone reached through the piece, you would see why it was the winning piece. And following that, we have the piece by Aisha Habib Ahmed. And following that, we have the kind of runner-up for the essay prize. So it was the piece on Tanzania. And then we have the piece on white flowers. George Hawkins, concept of access. I will kind of message you later, George. Who said that you can access the journal, and we'll work something out. All right. Okay. So now we'll move on to our second part of the launch events, where our steering committee members will be giving their kind of speeches. So firstly, we have Dr. Ipek Demir giving a speech on race and transition. So Dr. Ipek Demir, if you would, we'll invite you to speak right now. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Just hit a timer on this. So thank you for the invitation onto the steering committee, and a huge congratulations to everyone who has been involved in the production of this issue. The previous issues looked extremely professional, and this one, as has been mentioned in the comments, has really seems like everything's been ramped up another level in terms of social media outreach, content, etc., etc. So I doff my cap to you all. I definitely wasn't doing such glorious things when I was an undergraduate student, but hey. So today I'm going to talk about the trust or perish, the responsibility to protect a changing world order. So basically I'm going to talk about trust and the UN Security Council and the use of force, which may seem a bit odd, but I've put together a roundtable that's appearing next month in the journal Ethics and International Affairs. And it brings together kind of about half a dozen of the world's leading academics to talk about the responsibility to protect in a changing world order, basically. And there's been a lot of talk with regards to how we may be returning to the Cold War period, and for example, a paralysis within the Security Council. So what I'm asking you today is, this presentation asks you to consider the role that trust, distrust, and ambivalence play in enabling and constraining the use of force under the responsibility to protect. So the first thing I want to do then is just talk a little bit about trust and the concept of trust, because I teamed up with a professor at Birmingham called Nick Wheeler. I don't know if you can see this book, but he wrote a book called Trusting Enemies about 3 years ago with Oxford University Press. So the title of the book is Trusting Enemies. So this is all about, and he provides historical case studies, how even within a world with no world government, where you have certain countries who may be at direct war with one another, and one of his case studies is the US and the USSR in the 1980s, the Soviet Union, how you can still forge bonds of trust between enemies through interpersonal relationships. So essentially you get the two people in a room and they just may form bonds of trust on a specific issue area. That's the key thing to understand. It's not that the two people involved trust one another, it's that they trust one another on a specific issue area. So you got a lot of talk over the weekend, the G7 and Boris Johnson bringing people together, and Biden has basically framed it as though this is a return to multilateralism and we won't be doing things like what's happened under Trump. And essentially this is an attempt to restore levels of trust, because under Trump, trust was through the floor. In fact, I read some data this morning, 78% of German public who were surveyed trust Biden to do things correctly, whereas that was only 10% a year ago when the same German public were asked with regards to their views of America under Trump. So when it comes to trust, there's three things that are key: ability, benevolence, and integrity. And to go back to those three component parts with regards to Biden and Trump, I guess you may conclude that Trump was a little low on integrity, and the hope is that Biden will restore things. But as we argue in the paper, there's trust, there's distrust, but there's also a space in between, which is ambivalence, which is where you neither trust the actor nor distrust the actor on this specific issue area. So basically you might be willing to just let them do what they want to do and see how it plays out, you may be open to the idea that they could be doing things the right way, but you're also a bit suspicious and you're conscious that they may end up doing things the wrong way. Why does this all matter for the use of force and the responsibility to protect? Well, if we go back to Libya in 2011 and the last time the use of force was used under the responsibility to protect with Security Council authorization, it was often cast as though the Security Council trusted one another, and then following regime change, they distrusted the P3. And what we're arguing is that this binary, the pendulum swinging from trust to distrust, is problematic for three reasons. One, it fails to take into account the space between trust and distrust, because two of the states involved, two of the permanent 5 members, Russia and China, abstained on the vote. So they could have voted, they could have vetoed it, or they could have voted in favour of it, but they chose what we argue is a position of ambivalence. The second, it's important to recognise the role of bounded trust, because even though there were many states voting in favour of the intervention, they did so on the proviso that the NATO intervention was done in a certain way. And for example, they weren't necessarily permitting regime change. And the third, we think that the representations of Libya overemphasised the political fallout, because 6 of the 10 elected members continued to support the intervention. The biggest U-turn was South Africa, for those who are familiar with it. They were the ones that voted in favour of the intervention, but had indignation afterwards. So what went wrong? To go back to this idea of the backlash, we're basically interested that the BRICS, and this is why it's so important to this changing world order and transition, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, the backlash was from the BRICS. So you have South Africa, who had actually voted in favour of it, and then the neutral abstainers, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And we propose that essentially distrust emerged between the BRICS nations. Why is that? Because we argue that the P3, the UK, France, and the US, acted with a sense of superiority. They failed to have a serious debate over regime change. And at times, and we talk about this with regards to South Africa and the African Union, they even failed to answer questions. They just sat there in silence. So to go back to this interpersonal relationship between people as you're trying to build bonds of trust, if you've given the green light for NATO to intervene in Libya, and then 2 months in, you're asking them to pause and explain their strategy because there's more civilians being killed than the people who voted in favour of it were expecting. On 3 different occasions, the P3 just sat there in silence. They wouldn't even respond to the questions being asked. So we think this face-to-face interactions can provide a rich zone of information to a person's trustworthiness and untrustworthiness. And we basically don't think that the P3 did themselves any favour when they failed to engage in a debate. And to quote McLaughlin and Alex Bellamy, lack of accountability fuels distrust. So speaking for 8 minutes going forward, so the future basically, it's often been argued that essentially for there to be another intervention such as Libya, and some people may want this over Myanmar, but it's important to say one thing about the use of force. Even people who don't necessarily want the use of force, we believe it's needed in order to make other things work. So for example, in Kenya, they sent some mediators in to mediate post-election violence. And one of the reasons why the mediation was successful is because the threat of the use of force loomed large in the background. So it's not necessarily that people such as me are calling for more war. What we're saying is that there can be benefits that come from the threat of the use of force looming in the background. If perpetrators, like you see in Myanmar, think that there's no threat of the use of force coming, then there's not much to persuade them to change their behaviour. But we conclude that basically the future with regards to the use of force looks bleak for three reasons. One, we feel that great power politics, we feel that what you're seeing is that distrust is deepening across a range of strategic issues, and we talk about some of those issues in the paper. And therefore, the prospect for the P5 forging a consensus on the specific issue area of the responsibility to protect seems to be increasingly unlikely. The second thing is accountability. Essentially, the P3's lack of accountability over Libya and the catastrophic consequences that occurred in Libya since mean that there's no appetite for this sort of action to be taken again. The third thing is the importance of right leaders. And here we talk about US leadership has suffered dreadfully under Trump. Biden has said that America is back, to use Biden's phrase, but I'd be more critical because I think that line fails to recognize the problems that people had with American foreign policy prior to Trump. And here you already seeing it play out with the US basically using a silent veto over Israel earlier on this year, and not allowing the Security Council to debate and condemn Israeli actions. And this just looks to many people like the same old US foreign policy. So despite Biden's declarations that America is back, I think things will be better than under Trump, but I don't think there's going to be enough of a change to sort of galvanize the consensus needed. Overall, if states cannot build trust around the use of force under Pillar 3, then I feel that the R2P is in serious trouble, because essentially if we take this tool out of the toolbox, other tools may become blunt. And to go back to kind of Myanmar at the moment, I don't know if people have seen the images, but there's thousands of protesters and they're carrying around signs with the R2P on, and they're calling for R2P action. And I guess to go back to what I was saying, other things, other options like diplomacy, arms embargoes, travel bans, all of these things, they become less chance of being effective if you take the use of force away. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Adrian Gallagher. So it was your module on international relations last year, theories of IR, which I took, which also kind of motivated me in this journal, and even to kind of get you on the ECR2P talk and get you on the steering committee. It was such a pleasure, and your speech right now on the use of force also kind of resonates really well of what's going on. So thank you so much, Dr. Adrian Gallagher. And so that's about it from us, but we still have our Q&A. And before that, I've got two things. Firstly, I realized that the link earlier wasn't working, and thank you so much, Muhammad Omar Saeed, for sending the correct one. Just to right the wrongs, I'll send the correct one. And before we kind of start the Q&A session, Rachel, our digital marketing officer, would like to get a screenshot. So if anyone who doesn't want their faces doesn't want their faces displayed, you can turn off the camera. But if you want your faces to be on, you can turn on your camera. And Rachel, whenever you're ready, you could turn on your mic and tell everyone. So yeah.
Yeah, anyone who wants to be on the screen, please turn your camera on. I see a few of you joining us. It will just be used on our blog and on our social media to share the launch event and share the link for the journal. So I'll just take a quick screenshot now if everyone wants to smile. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Rachel. You have been doing a great job, even for the last few events. So yeah, thank you very much. And now we move on to Q&A. So if you have any questions for Dr. Ipek Demir or Adrian, or even for us, the editorial board, if you're planning to kind of apply next year. Any questions just on the chat? If not, we will just wait for about, we are doing really well for time this event. So I kind of overestimated the time, which is good. We'll wrap it up in about 8 minutes or even shorter than that, if there's no questions. All right, thank you so much for the question, Dr. Ipek Demir. So the criteria for joining the journal for students, it's first being an undergrad at the University of Leeds. So that's kind of the filter. So undergrad students at University of Leeds. Secondly, if you're planning to join either the editorial board or peer review team, you have to have some basic level of academic skills, because if you're joining the peer review team, we do have an interview where we test you on your academic skills. So we'll give you an article, ask you to read it, and kind of quiz you on it. And then if you want to join the editorial board, you kind of have to have project management skills, communication skills. That's about it for criteria. So anyone can join. It's open to anyone from any kind of faculty, so any school, even if you're from the School of Medicine and interested in human rights, I would encourage you to join as well. But yeah, so anyone from the University of Leeds. Can Leeds master students publish, review? Can they submit articles? So master students have kind of submitted last time to the journal itself, but we do not accept publication for master students, because they have the Leeds Postgraduate Review, which is a different publication. So this one is purely for undergraduates. And Zara is doing the blog. We have Lawrence this year, who was a master student, kind of submitted for the blog. And I see Rachel, your hand was raised. If you would like to say something about it.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that that we are asking for a CV and cover letter, and we'll be sharing all the information and details on how to submit your applications on our social media, on Twitter, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So if you follow us on any of those, you will be receiving the information. And I think our main focus is kind of in the cover letter. We would appreciate you highlighting any values that you think could contribute to the role. There isn't really a exact list of criteria that we have and that we're going to take off, but anything that you think would help us or help next year's board expand the activities of the journal and contribute to it in whichever role that you're looking into. I think that's really important.
Okay, so so first there's a question from Dr. Ipek Demir. How will the theme next year be decided? So this year's theme was decided. It was kind of collected from everyone in the board. We had a Google Doc to kind of put down our ideas on what the theme was, and then we felt that this year's theme of transition was most fitting for what happened, the pandemic and the BLM movement, the BLM protests. So transition was a good theme. Next year's journal, we don't know what's going to happen over the next year. Hopefully good things, but whatever happens, that will be the theme, whichever abstract kind of word that the editorial board kind of decides. And so I have a question from Mohammed Omar Saeed. This is, I believe, to Dr. Adrian Gallagher. So you mentioned the benefits from the threat of use of force and how that could play into the larger peace process, especially when one state on one side is Palestine and the threat is Israel, who have been a nuclear power, and all that part being threatened in this situation would not be further radicalized. So considering that they do not have the resources as much as the other. So yeah, he sent it on the chat as well. Dr. Adrian Gallagher, if you would like to take the question.
I guess I'd just go back to this So I know it's interdisciplinary, but basically as an international relations scholar, I'd start with what we would call the anarchical realm. So we have a security dilemma, and that can foster violence between states, even when the actors involved don't want violence. So it can be that there's a cycle of mistrust and fear between states that leads to, as I say, wars and cycles of violence, even when not necessarily both sides or both leaders involved want war. With regards to Israel-Palestine, Netanyahu for 12 years has kind of stoked up domestic support with a certain brand of foreign policy, if we put it like that. So I guess the hope is, and this is where Nick Wheeler wrote his a book on the security dilemma, which is what I'm talking about. And then he was talking about trust as a way of mitigating the impact of the security dilemma. There's certain ways to stop wars within a system of anarchy. One is if both sides have got nuclear weapons. That ain't gonna happen. One is through the United Nations. One is through economic interdependency. And another one, and this goes back to this argument about trust, is that even when you've got enemies, and the examples that Nick's got in the book, I mean, these are countries that were completely at odds with one another. So even where you've got enemies, you can build trust through interpersonal relationships. So you would hope that the election of the coalition within Israel may provide windows of opportunity to, and again, it's important to stress, not necessarily build trust between enemies on a range of issues. They just need to build trust on a specific issue. And you would hope that some mutually beneficial understanding could be forged, but that is me trying to offer some light in what seems to be a very dark tunnel of violence.
All right, thank you so much for the answer. I hope they answered the question, Omar Saeed. Yep. Okay. Any further questions? If not, we could wrap it up. Yeah. If everyone would like to just if everyone from the editorial board would just like to turn on their microphones, and then we'll just say thank you. So yeah, just starting from me, thank you all the attendees, and it's been a pleasure, and I hope you enjoy reading the journal. The graphic designer has done a really good job, and those who have contributed as well. So yeah, I'll pass it on to Poppy.
Yeah,
I was just going to say thank you again to the steering committee and all of our peer reviewers, and thank you to you, Azar, as well. You've been a great editor-in-chief. It's been really lovely to work with you all.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Thanks to the team. It's been a great experience, and it's been really interesting trying to get over the hurdles of working online with you. But I think obviously the journal being online and all of the events that we've been able to host this year, it's been a great experience, and hopefully it'll contribute to the future of the journal as well.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate what everyone else has said. Thank you very much to everyone that's contributed and attended all of our events. And don't forget to follow us on social media and things so you can stay up to date with what we're up to.
Thank you, everyone. I think all the thank yous have been covered. So thank you for attending this event today, and hopefully you enjoy the journal. There's some really interesting articles in there. There's also some really interesting creative pieces as well. So definitely take a look.
If everyone can turn on their, unmute themselves, we can do a big clap to finish off maybe. 1, 2, 3, you can turn off your, okay. Well done to the authors.
Right, thank you so much, Dr. Ipek Demir, for that. It's been a pleasure, and yeah, that's about it then. So we'll end it here. have a read of the journal. Let us know what you think on our social media as well. And yeah, thank you so much, everyone. And I'll end it here.